Hey everyone, welcome to the Jabbering Jawas podcast with your hosts, Joey Clark, and,
Will, Thrill, Stafford.
or as we go by around here, Joey One Kenobi and Will Sith. Thank you for returning this week. We got a lot to talk about, especially about the Mandalorian, and no plan with the sequel trilogy. I don't know why I'm so happy when I'm really pissed. But if you are under the age of 18, young Padawan, either put in those earbuds or walk away from your parents or guardian, as they say nowadays sometimes, or just don't watch. Be a good human being. Just watch. We need the views. Yeah. So we can say words like fuck, cunt, piss, cocksucker, motherfucker, and tits. I think
Yes.
that's George Carlin magic words. All
Yep.
the words you cannot say.
Not sure we ever use all those, but just in case we want to, you know. So,
Let's see. And we start with the bad. Yeah, let's start with the bad. So
yes.
last week, as we kind of discussed the frustrations of John Boyega, and understandably so, those frustrations that he has. Now there's kind of more fuel to the fire being added by Daisey Ridley's latest appearance on Jimmy Fallon with Josh Gad as guest host. She has basically confirmed that the sequel trilogy really had no plan for her, which is literally the biggest part of the whole fucking thing. Or the whole sequel trilogy. Because she was like, oh, yeah, at first we were playing with the Kenobi idea, then in 8 we kind of went with nothing, and then in 9 they were trying to figure it out while they were filming the fucking thing. Where she had no idea where her character was going.
Yeah.
I'm not a big Hollywood studio, but what the fuck? Really, like, what the fuck? I don't understand how the hell you, as a studio, do not plan out. And I'm not saying every little nitty gritty detail, that's cool. But how do you not plan out the main story arc for basically your main character of the franchise? Now, before anyone makes this fucking argument, oh, George Lucas changed his mind a lot of times. Well, you know what? He fucking started Star Wars, so he had the luxury to do so. And you want to know what else? He didn't know if he was going to even get the fucking first movie done because he had everything writing against him. He had a major studio basically against him. He had the cast and crew kind of just making fun of his ass the entire time of filming. And Star Wars was basically an indie film. So of course shit is going to change. And it's like, well, Luke was going to be on the dark side. He's like, the dude was one man basically planning all of this shit out on his own. Disney and Lucasfilm are multi-billion-dollar companies. They have the resources to do this shit. So that argument is invalid. And plus, too, Lucas, 1 through 3, regardless of the execution, pretty much planned out in a cohesive story.
Yeah. And it's like, we talked about this before. It's like, say what you will about the prequels, but then every gripe that people have about it is like some minor character or like weird little like tiny continuity details. But the main things, like, he pretty much nailed most of those, you know? So it's like, is that really comparable? And it's like, yeah, you can talk about the in the original trilogy with Leia and Han or whatever, but that was just a matter of, well, these actors have more chemistry, so we're gonna go with this, you know. But yeah, there's no excuse for a company like Disney with the amount of people that they have like under their payroll, whose jobs it is to like to write, to do continuity, like all these things. Like they have so many resources. And it's like you can't have that happen where your main actress doesn't know what the fuck she's gonna do. And my theory, honestly, is I think they did have a plan. Like they talked about she could be a Kenobi, and I think that was when they had the Force Awakens coming out, and there was JJ, and there's that scene where Rey touches Luke's lightsaber, or Anakin's, I forgot. But she touched the lightsaber, and then she has the vision where she's like going through all the stuff from the other movies, Cloud City, and the last thing you hear is fucking Kenobi's voice, like, Rey, this is your last steps. And then right there, that moment when I was watching that, like in the theater, I was like, oh, Rey's a Kenobi. It makes sense. She's British. It would come full circle because Kenobi was the one who trained a Skywalker, and now Skywalker will be the one who trains Kenobi. It all makes sense, right? Like storytelling. And I think that was the fucking plan. But then you have Last Jedi come in, and it just introduces this whole, oh, you're nobody thing. So now everybody's like, oh, Rey is nobody, because Rian Johnson went over and said like, oh, she's just nobody. And I think that he honestly, that's what he intended, is that she was nobody. But then College of Burrow fucking leaves episode 9. So whatever he was planning, that just went out the window. And then like, oh shit, we gotta bring somebody in. So they brought JJ back in, whose plan was obviously different than Rian Johnson's. And he's like, well, I had planned on her to be somebody. Since there was like no setup for it in this, I guess we're just gonna go with she's a Palpatine. So I said that from the beginning. I was like, she to me should be a Kenobi. It would make sense. Comes full circle, but yeah.
Yeah, and obviously I call myself Joey One Kenobi on here, and then Kenobi's my favorite character of all time. And here's the thing. Her lineage could have made sense whether she was a true Skywalker, a Kenobi, or even a Palpatine. None of those things were really set up. I will argue, like you said, the Kenobi thing would have made sense, especially because it sounds like Rey, these are your first steps. Like that sounds like something a family member would tell you. Like kind of like when a toddler is learning to walk, like, oh, her first steps, like something like that. Like something you tell your kid or, a relative, like a young kid when you're an older person.
Yeah.
I think a Kenobi thing could have worked. I think it would have been cool too, because the only person that Kenobi would have any type of lineage to would be either if he had a brother or sister or something, or if Satine and him had a love child and then they kind of bring her into the fold. I don't think it would have been convoluted because and it would have been cool to have like a Clone Wars nod, like
And you
it,
could have, and they could have had Ian McGregor like come in and like, make him look older. He could have
yeah.
been Ben, like talk to Luke or something, And I was like, Ben, like who is she? Like something, And it's like I we talked about this. I love the Yoda cameo in Last Jedi. I thought that was one of the better parts of Last Jedi, but didn't really make sense like that much in the story. Like I get it, like he was there to like, tell Luke some things or whatever, and he had trained him on Dagobah and everything, but if Rey would have been Kenobi, I think it could have made sense to bring in like Ian McGregor. He could have been there as like Ben Kenobi and like kind of done a similar thing, but we'll talk about Last Jedi soon enough. But yeah, it just, I said that from the beginning. I was just like, she should be a Kenobi, right? Because I think it makes sense to me why Obi-Wan even almost understood Anakin in a way with him and Padme because of what he had with Satine. I'm like, it could have been totally possible that they actually like got together. Because like Obi-Wan, especially when he was younger, he wasn't like the perfect Jedi, or I think he's tried to be that more as he like, went on and on. And obviously the Jedi fall, and after that point, it's just like, oh shit, what do I do now? He's just on Brandon on the planet by himself, so it's like he could have had a kid with her and just not known.
It just kind of brings me back to there's so much you could have done with the sequel trilogy that just wasn't done. And it's not all about satisfying fan expectations. Like, if you tell a good, solid story, there's gonna be people that appreciate it, even if it's not something I would have chosen. Like, I wish Ray would have been somebody,
Hmm.
and to me, she's really not because it just is so fucking does not make sense. And it's like, well, it's a fantasy universe. Anyone can make. Well, yeah, true, but it wasn't set up. It didn't make any sense, and there's no emotional connection to it. Because like, what is the point of her really being a Palpatine at this point in time? Like, I honestly would have rather it be nobody because it ended up going in that weird direction. And I don't think, and yes, the Force can belong to anybody, and I get that they were trying to do that. To me, it almost is like anyone can be special and anyone can do anything. It's like, it's a good thing to motivate people, but in real life, not everyone can do anything. And that's just a given. And that's never going to change.
I think I think they brought in Palpatine because I think JJ come back and he's like, "This is the Skywalker saga, and we want to wrap this up." And I think that the plan, probably from the beginning, when they started doing that movie, was to have her take the Skywalker name. So they kind of needed a reason. It's like like we talked about before, she probably wouldn't want to take Palpatine's name, even if she could make it like a better thing, because like she didn't want Palpatine to live on. So I think that's probably the reasoning. And then like, oh, Skywalker saga, we should close it out like that. But there was nothing, like you said, in Last Jedi. There was a little bit in Force Awakens that they kind of ignored, where it could, yeah, she could have possibly been a Skywalker, but then obviously uh, Ryan Johnson and everybody introduced this whole, oh well, her and Kylo have a romantic thing now, so they couldn't really be like, oh, they're related. So yeah, because they didn't want to do that again. But yeah, like Kenobi would have made total sense. It's like that could have been, they could have thought like, oh, her parents were nobody, because maybe they just had like different last names, but they were like of Kenobi's lineage and nobody like really knew, you know? They could have been like nobody to anybody, but then she's the one who got like the power, basically, you know? And then, like I said, it would have been full circle. And I feel like they could have done more with Luke's character then, because, the whole full circle, like, oh yeah, that was his old master, and now he's her master.
Yeah,
And it would have made more sense because they'd have more of a connection then. When if she took the name, they would have more of a connection. Her and Luke.
it just it pisses me off how much they fucking wrecked with this fucking sequel trilogy.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like the concepts that JJ was coming up with, like even the stuff that got scrapped was really fucking cool. Like for episode 7, the whole thing about like a split kind of Force Ghost where there's like an evil side of like Anakin that still exists and like a light side version. It's like it would have been cool. I don't know how well it would have been worked or executed, but like that's
It's
a cool thing to introduce.
well, it's funny you bring that up because they actually did that in that one game I told you about, the SWTOR, uh, Star Wars Knights, the Old Republic, not Knights of the Old Republic, the Old Republic. They had Revan, and like obviously in Knights of the Old Republic, like it's all about Revan could be light side or dark side or whatever. So in the Old Republic, they brought him back, and he was actually split, and he had a good spirit and a bad spirit. I never got that DLC or anything, so I never played it. I kind of watched a little bit of it on like YouTube or something, and I mean, for the most part, it kind of works. So maybe that's why I didn't go with it, because people kind of receptive of it, not really, because I was like, oh, this is kind of weird. They just got to split him up, and he like had to like rejoin his spirits or something, and it was like, okay. So maybe they didn't go with that because it's a little convoluted, like that whole idea. But it's definitely interesting if they could have done it right, because I could see I can see that being done with Anakin too, because he's kind of similar, where he's like this really powerful Force user who has been on both sides, and that could like split you down the middle pretty much. So, and you could have seen Hayden Christensen again. Once again, somebody else you could have had in there. But anyway,
JJ actually wanted to bring Anakin into the fold, which makes me think if he would have done 8 or 9, he would, or 8 and 9, he would have eventually done it because he saw that it was about bringing back. It's like why treat your franchise like a fucking baton race?
you know that honestly, I feel like would have been a better last bad guy. Is like the evil part of Anakin, like Vader, is actually the one pulling the strings, and like he somehow found a way to like try and like resurrect himself or something, and then maybe they recruit like good Anakin to help them out. That would have been actually interesting. That would have been different than just Palpatine's creating mini Death Stars now again.
Or I wouldn't have minded if it was kind of like a Horcrux in Harry Potter, where like his soul was split, so it's like that piece resides in that helmet, and it's not
Mm-hmm.
a full spirit, but it's possessive, and maybe Palpatine was utilizing that like piece of him to bring Kylo in,
Yeah, I
and
mean,
maybe they never really like maybe Kylo really never knew about Anakin, like he just knew about Darth Vader,
yeah.
and then like real Anakin like shows him the right way, like
And if we had real Anakin, then we could have got more of of Ben Ben Solo, you know. So
like I
because
think
we
a cool way you could have left 8 was him kind of being conflicted and confused, and on the very end you just see this luminous figure pop out, and it's kind of like Luke at like Force Awakens, where you just leave the fuck on a cliffhanger, and you just have Anakin emerge in front of Ben, and then 9 opens up with that conversation,
mm-hmm.
and then Ben realizes, okay, I gotta go back, I gotta save what left I can.
See, and then again, if you have Anakin and raise a Kenobi, more connections because that's who trained Anakin. So
And
it's
the
like,
fact we didn't get more Force Ghosts fucking pisses me off.
no.
Like Yoda, I do disagree a little bit. I think it does serve the story, even though I don't care too much for the story.
Well,
I think it
that
serves it really well.
yeah, no, I agree. It serves that story, but that's the other problem though. Is the Last Jedi story, which if she would have been Kenobi from the beginning, probably would have been much different. So yeah,
Like you could have easily explained it in a couple of lines, like "You're a Kenobi," or it would have been cool if you would have had Luke say something like similar to a presence I haven't felt since Ben, and then he turns around and it's Rey,
mm-hmm.
and then it's like, "Who are you?" And she's like, I came to find out." It's like, "You're Kenobi," and she's like, "Oh, what?" Maybe
Then
something
then
like that.
could have had a Force Ghost or something, or like a fucking holocron, where you get fucking Darth Maul in there and he's like Kenobi. No, uh, I just want Darth Maul there, but no. Yeah, like there would have been so many more connections because I feel like yeah, obviously Palpatine's the big bad guy, but his connections with other people is very like they're not really there. It's like he has connections to Anakin and obviously Luke in the originals, and then I mean mostly Anakin in the prequels.
I will say the other thing, if she was a Kenobi, the one thing, the other way I could see it doing is if because Palpatine is scared of Kenobi because he knows that Kenobi is the only one that can or that keeps Anakin from going too dark.
Mhm.
And he wanted to end his life. That's why he said, "Leave him, or we'll never make it on Revenge of the Sith." Because Palpatine wants Kenobi out of the way. With Kenobi out of the way, the more you separate those two, the more likely he's able to get Anakin for himself. So I feel like what would have been a cool thing, even if Rey was a clone, I'm kind of all for the Sith science stuff because it's kind of cool, or Sith alchemy.
Yeah.
If he would have somehow found the DNA of Obi-Wan and trying to make an evil-ish version of him but failed with Rey, Kenobi was the one that he was afraid of. Much kind of like Voldemort was afraid of Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
Like always the people that go towards the light. But if you were to try and twist it and manipulate it to be dark and serve it for your purpose, it would have made so much more sense why he would be afraid of Rey overthrowing, because she is a threat, because she is a Kenobi.
Mm-hmm.
That would have made way more fucking sense.
Yeah. No, like I I completely agree with that because it's like if you think about it, since the first movie, Kenobi has been the one who basically has set all this shit up and thwarted like their like everything. Like he beat Darth Maul in the second movie. He's the one who like trained Anakin. He's the one who like well, I mean, he's the one who discovered like the Separatist base and all that shit, right? He discovered that they've been cloning uh Jango Fett. Like he's the one who did all this shit. Like he's always been the one who's been thwarting like the Emperor's plans and shit. So it would make sense to me. He's like, these fucking Kenobis. Like I need to like I'm gonna make one. He's gonna be on my side or whatever. And he ends up making Rey, and then I don't know what would happen. He would like lose her, or somebody would take her or something. And he's like, shit, I don't know where she is. And then she comes through, and she's has naturally still become like good. And he's like, damn it. It's like I need to destroy this girl before she fucking thwarts my new plans again. But also, then they needed to. See, here's the other thing. I don't think that Snoke was meant to be, when they first introduced him, a clone of, like a failed clone of somebody that Palpatine made. There was never any indication that Snoke was Palpatine controlling somebody. There was like no semblance of that in The Force Awakens. Like, that just made no sense. And then obviously, Ryan Johnson did the whole like, subverting expectation things in the second one. And honestly, I was kind of fine with that. I was like, okay, cool. We just killed Snoke. That was one of the things in the movie I was kind of like cool with. I was like, all right, it's not what we expected. I can respect that. But at the same time, it's like, what was the point of this character? And then they basically was like, oh, we need to come up with a point for this. So then they did it in the last one. Like, okay, yeah, he's Palpatine. He was controlling them. He made them. And yeah, then they needed to set up so many more things, at least in the Last Jedi, in order for them to work in the last one.
Yeah, I don't think Snoke could have ever been the main villain, only because he is too. I think he's too rooted in CGI for one. Two, he's fucking huge. So to me, to see Rey take on basically a giant towering over her would just look fucking goofy.
Yeah.
Like to me, just because you are literally bigger than life does not necessarily make you a threat.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like Snoke had to probably eventually be a puppet or a pawn or maybe some other force ability that makes him, or that someone is him that really isn't Snoke and is just altering their appearance
Mm-hmm.
somehow, some way. I am kind of glad that he was killed off, but again, it's like he didn't really serve much of a purpose. And I think that was probably the issue was like Snoke. It would have been more interesting to me if he was just a really intricate projection that Kylo followed or something.
I,
Like
I
someone's just pulling this digital string trick on him or something.
I honestly thought after Last Jedi that it was like the those older books with Palpatine when he's making a clones and he had the ability to kind of transfer his soul basically into like a different clone. That's what
Yeah.
I thought it was going to be. I thought it was like, okay, maybe Snoke or maybe it's Palpatine or something. I thought that maybe it could be Palpatine. I'm like, he made clones and he can like transfer. And I honestly thought that somebody was gonna like transfer themselves to General Hux, and then General Hux would be a bigger threat, but that didn't happen. Uh, Especially you have Domhnall Gleeson, like, and that's what you do with his character. And like, come on, man. But
I'm
uh,
the spy.
I was like, come on, man. Uh, yeah, I thought it was gonna be maybe a situation like that, especially because like right after the Last Jedi came out, it was like a few months or something. They're like, oh yeah, Palpatine's gonna be in the last one. So why are we like learning about this right now or whatever? Why are there rumors about this already? And it's like, okay, well if it's Palpatine, then yeah, he had that kind of Force essence like transfer thing that he did in the old book. So maybe they'll do that. I thought that would be cool, and like they didn't even do that. So I was like, okay, I guess not. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I don't know. I'm just so fucking done with this stupid sequel trilogy.
Hmm.
I keep saying sequel trilogy, but it's really 8 and 9 that I'm just pissed about.
Mm-hmm.
Just
Force
it's
Awakens
almost
had
yeah.
Force Awakens had setups, like it absolutely did, and they could have just built off of those. But yeah, the more you watch Last Jedi, the more you realize that it's just like completely disconnected from the Force Awakens. And it's just like, how did that happen? Like it's just baffling.
Which is so fucking weird because it takes place right after The Force Awakens, but it doesn't feel like it's the same thing. And
Yeah, like the characters feel completely different.
it's like who in their right fucking mind starts the next Star Wars film right after? It is absolutely ridiculous. Time jumps in the Star Wars universe help so you can tell a better story. If anything, just have Rey meeting Luke at the beginning and then maybe have like a little powwow talk with them and then like jump in time where like she's really well trained or something.
Yeah,
And
I mean,
resistance and
well, you know what? I was about to say, I'm like, I guess that's kind of JJ's fault because he ended Force Awakens that way, but no, it's really not. Yeah, you're right. He could have just started The Last Jedi with the time jump. It's like, oh, okay, they've done this shit, and now she's been training with Luke or something. But they wanted to do a whole, I don't, not the Jedi anymore and all that shit. But yeah, and the throwing the lightsaber over the cliff joke, and yeah,
like everyone was so quiet when that moment happened. Like no one knew whether to laugh, whether to cry, whether to punch the fucking screen. And like for the longest time, I was so conflicted about how I felt about that movie. And I used to go through these highs and lows. And it's like
mm-hmm.
there are good moments in every Star Wars film, and that one too, admittedly. Like the Yoda thing, I thought was some of the best Yoda that we've ever got in the franchise. I loved him, and then that fight where you think Kylo and Rey are teaming up, I was really impressed with, and it was just beautifully shot, and
Yeah,
I
like
really like that. But it's like it doesn't make any sense. Like you have these cool key moments, but they're not glued together with good story. They're just kind of it almost feels like a super rough cut. We're saying, all right, we got these good sequences here. Let's just put some filler in here until we get some really good shots, and then they left it.
yeah, it just seems like there were other ideas to be had there, and they didn't like fully explore them. like the whole Canto Bite thing, like we said, and Maz Kanata, and like I said last week, like in John Boyega's character, like Finn, it's just like what happened there? Hey, what happened with all that? It's like I feel like there could have been like so many more better like story beats done with not only him but Poe Dameron, with Rose, with like all these people, and it's just like maybe it was time. I don't know. Because maybe they're like, oh, well, we got to get this done in like a year and a half or something. So let's just this is good enough, I guess. Like I don't get it. And yeah, we always talk about this, but the separating of the characters, the way they did that, just wasn't great. She didn't even come back for them. She just came back to for Kylo, which started the whole like setting up like these two instead of the like big three that they started Force Awakens with. And the thing is why I was so disconnected in that movie. And then, like I said, I liked the Force connection that her and Kylo had. I thought that was cool, the dad thing.
Yeah.
But they kind of sacrificed all the rest of the characters to kind of do that, you know. So it was yeah. And they literally sacrificed Snoke and Hux and Luke.
Yeah. Fucking Luke. I just want to remember him in Return of the Jedi and that one little scene in Rise of Skywalker. But
Yeah, yeah. That like that was the issue with Rise of Skywalker. They just tried to save. They tried to save face with people. Like, oh guys, look, we got all these callbacks. We got these things that you wanted to see. See, here's Luke in his glory, but it's like it's too late because this movie is connected to this movie, which is supposed to be connected to this first movie, but none of them are actually like this movie's over here, this movie's over here, this movie's over here. It's like it doesn't make any sense together.
excuse me, everyone. It's been a long week.
Yes.
But it's just I just feel so fried because we've talked about this so many times, and I don't get how you fuck it all up so badly. And then it's like the other thing to me is like there's still people defending the sequel trilogy, and I'm like, what for? Why? It's like if you enjoy it, that's cool. More power to you because I wish that we both did. We just don't, and there's very compelling reasons why we don't. It was a shit show.
It's like I feel like I defended when like Last Jedi came out. I kind of defended it a bit because I thought it was like I know it was cool. It can subvert the expectation, but the more you like watch it, it's just the more you realize it's just not connected to the Force Awakens. Like it doesn't make sense with the movie, and that's the main thing. Even if if I'd never seen Star Wars before and I watched these movies individually, I might be like, okay, this is pretty fun. This is cool. Like I can understand why some people would be like these are kind of fun to watch. Like sure, but as a part of the Skywalker saga, as part of like this trilogy altogether, they don't make any sense together. And that's the thing that like throws me off is I can't sit down and watch all three of these movies one after another and feel like I just watched like a complete trilogy. That's the problem. I every time I watch these or I try to watch these, it's just like I feel like there's so much missing that we need in these. That's the issue. You get this empty feeling after you watch all of them. You're like, it's just not satisfying.
Yeah, and I don't mind Raylo for the record. It's just the execution. Because I know J.J. Abrams has said like the biggest sin of the original trilogy is not having Leia and Leia and Luke together or whatever. I think that's what he said. So it's like I kind of get why he. I feel like he probably would have gone that direction,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Yeah, yeah.
but would have actually made more sense and been an earned moment because I feel like if Ben would have started to turn by the end of 8 or feel really you see the conflict within him,
Mhm.
I think it would have allowed a better chance of it making sense in 9 if like he goes and like the whole movie is about him and Ray kind of preparing to get to that payoff.
Yeah.
And I think I would have actually enjoyed it because it's like we get two characters that one went through their trials in a completely different way from the other, but in the end, light conquers all, love conquers all, and it would have made for I think a more satisfying ending to finally see a redemption where someone lives on. They don't have to fucking die, which
Yeah.
is my big issue with Rise of Skywalker. Is you don't have a real Skywalker, and then it's like, well, what is a real Skywalker? It's like the fucking bloodline, dummy. That's what a real Skywalker is. You can't just take a name and be like, "Oh, I'm a Skywalker." Especially when, and I made this argument too, where it's like the Skywalker name doesn't really mean all that much to her because if you look at it, the one name that would make sense for her to take would be Solo because the closest connection I think with any of them was Han Solo. Like I felt that those two really connected. And then Leia Organa Solo, because I think she did take his name officially in canon. I think, or at least added it on. Like she had that little connection with Leia as her master, and then they talked. You saw a couple times, and then Ben Solo, the guy she falls in love with. Like nothing that happened with a Skywalker per se, which is Luke. Like Leia doesn't go by Skywalker, so why the fuck would it, and then Ben doesn't go by Skywalker. Like Solo would have made sense.
Yeah, you know what else is weird to me? That last part when she takes the name in Rise of Skywalker, they kind of showed like Leia and Luke there, right, as like Force ghosts or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's like they weren't even that close after, you know what I mean? Like even during Last Jedi, he didn't actually go there and like see his like he was there as a projection. We get it, but like he wasn't even there. Like he hadn't talked to her for how long? But now they're just like chilling in the Force. And did Leia even learn that? That's the other thing. But
Luke
yeah,
must have taught her, I feel like.
yeah, I would hope so. But yeah, that's just that was weird to me. It's like I feel like they put him in there because like, oh, I'm gonna look at them and I'm be like, oh, I want to be a Skywalker. But yeah, it doesn't make much sense because yeah, like you said, Leia, yeah, she's a Skywalker originally, but she was never known as that like ever. She was always either Organa or Solo. So it's like, and she wasn't that close to Luke. So you know what else is weird to me? I thought it would have been cool for Rey to meet Yoda. Yeah,
Yeah, because it seems like a rite of passage that people meet him. Because, like in Rebels, Ezra meets him, and it's not his direct master, but
yeah.
it feels like everyone goes to Yoda, and it's even kind of like said in the
Ahsoka,
yeah.
Ahsoka talked to him.
That
Plenty of
would have
time.
been a cool thing too. Like, I don't think they would have done it, but if you would have had a female Jedi Force ghost, like, or at least kind of like what Yoda did in Rebels, where he appears in front of Ezra, but Ahsoka do it to Rey. It's like it would have brought in a cool character, and it's also like a female master talking to a female student, and then it would have been like, oh yay,
I
female
think
representation done right.
I think that if they would have like we said like taken more time on these, they had all these other things kind of that they were coming out with, right? Like the Obi-Wan series and all this other shit. And like, yeah, sure, would it taking you longer? But I think the fact that they had all these things set up, or like the Mandalorian, and obviously they have like the Ahsoka series and all this other stuff like set up, I think it would have paid off more because they could have had these characters that people are seeing on like Disney Plus or whatever. They could have had them appear in these movies in some capacity. Like I remember people talking about because they had Ashley Eckstein, they had her voice in there, but then they put like female Jedi or whatever. Like I think you talked about that because like yeah, general audiences aren't going to understand if they see it like Ahsoka. They'll be like, who's Ahsoka? You know? And it's like it could have been more of a payoff if you had all these other things kind of coming out while you're like kind of taking your time making these movies, and then people will understand these references and all these other people more. So then another reason why they shouldn't have been like, yeah, we're gonna make one every other year. Yeah.
And I think I get what you're saying for sure. I think it was also because they didn't really realize what Disney Plus as a platform was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
But taking time would have definitely helped. Like we've said many times, it should have been a 3-year period because we would have had more time to plan and it would have paid off better.
I'm assuming they at least had like Clone Wars season 7 in the pipeline. I'm assuming they already did, right? They talked about that pretty early on, because I don't think we even knew that was going to be on Disney Plus. They were just talking about like, oh, we want to bring back Clone Wars season 7. So it's like, at least then, obviously it's on Disney now, wherever they would have put it. If it wasn't Disney Plus, like more people are gonna see Clone Wars. Are gonna see characters like Ahsoka and Obi-Wan and all these other people, and it could have tied into the movies more if they would have just like at least take like 2 years or something, in between.
No, the issue, well, what you're saying, Clone Wars, they had planned for season 7 and 8, but it basically was put in a grave and no one ever thought it was going to return. And then Dave was fortunate enough to be asked to do it again. So it wouldn't, I don't think it would have really affected all that much. But the big issue too is that Solo and Rogue One utilized the Lucasfilm story group quite a bit. 7, 8, and 9 really didn't, from my understanding, from people that I've talked to that work in the story group. It is up to the directors and filmmakers' discretion whether or not they want to utilize them. They're always open to doing so, but they didn't, which is unfortunate because, like, if you collaborate with the story group, they know all these little things that can happen.
Yeah.
They can, like, oh, maybe you can, here's a good character for what you're planning right there. Instead of this person, maybe use this one because they have a good history. The fans really like them, and it would make sense story wise.
Mm-hmm.
That's why Rogue One and Solo does it pretty well to an extent too. Why they have it really feels in universe, and there are things that are there that make sense, especially Rogue One, where I like even like the small references where like the stormtroopers on Jeddah are talking about like speeders, and it kind of calls back to A New Hope, where Luke's talking about speeders to Obi-Wan, like different models, and they're talking about the same ones.
Yeah.
That's kind of cool. So it's just like those little details that really kind of help the universe, and it's like I think the bigger filmmakers need to put aside their ego and just be like, hey, this is a collaborative effort. We really should utilize them because they know the story. They know everything that we can have at our disposal, which is why Dave Filoni working on The Mandalorian, because he works with the story group so closely, it's perfect.
Yeah. I would have liked to see them like utilize that more, because Solo wasn't amazing or anything, but I will say continuity wise, it got stuff pretty well. Like there was some weird things obviously, but they got things pretty well. So it's like I feel like it's something you got to utilize as like the Lucasfilm film story group. Like that's what they do. That's what they're there for, So it's like, yeah, you would like to see him at least consult somebody like Dave Filoni or something. You know what I mean? Like he has like an encyclopedia in his fucking head of Star Wars stuff, like, and we're seeing it on the Mandalorian now, So,
And it
but
makes sense.
maybe at that point, because Force Awakens came out like 2014. Maybe at that point he wasn't like quite ready to do like live action stuff. Because I know that he was a little apprehensive to even do like the Mandalorian and everything, but he's good. Like he's good.
I think that kind of segues into our next section, Mandalorian season 2.
Yes.
I'm feeling pretty good about it um, overall. Um, the one thing that really just kind of gives me joy to hear is that the budget, because a lot of the budget for the first season was utilized to kind of lay the foundation and get everything kind of up and running. But now, since everything's already up and running, they're using it to really, they're throwing all that money on the screen versus behind the scenes. And I can't wait to see some probably bigger action set pieces, bigger explosions, more characters, maybe even a bigger, slightly bigger battle scene with like maybe a whole garrison of fucking stormtroopers. Or
Mhm.
I'm I'm just pumped to see what's gonna happen with that. And then the other thing too is what Filoni was saying. It's like, well, you when like they were talking about season 2 being better, he's like, well, you always want the Empire Strikes Back to be better than A New Hope. So it's like, I think they got some pretty cool shit in store for us.
Oh yeah. Like we talked about it a little bit before we started doing this. I love that people like Giancarlo Esposito are just like really excited about their fucking characters. Like he plays some great characters, and he's sitting here like talking about Gideon, like he can't wait because he's like talking about how he's gonna go like toe to toe with the Mandalorian and all this stuff about the dark saber, and it's just like if he's that excited, he gets me excited because he's such a great actor, and every time he plays a bad guy, it's just like he absolutely kills the role. So like I'm totally on board with that. There's people like Gina Carano, who we talked about before. Like she didn't really like understand Star Wars too much when she got on like the first season, but now she's
Yeah.
saying she's much more comfortable and everything, and she was still good in season one. So it's like now that she's more comfortable, she like, understands these things more. And I mean, you got somebody like I said, Dave Filoni or John Favreau, like on set, and they just know these things. They know how to get actors to kind of understand like this is like what we're going for, this is what we're doing. Like I, I think people like her, like in their roles, are gonna be even better than they already were. So I'm excited. It looks like uh, Carl Weathers is gonna have a bigger role too, maybe because sent me that article I was looking through, and they had a lot of pictures of him as well, kind of there. So hopefully he understands more because he said he didn't really understand Star Wars that much at all. So it's like I think it looks like they're just going bigger and better with everything here, from like what the actors are doing, what they know, to the budget, like everything. So yeah, man, I'm excited. What is it, October, right?
Yeah, October 30th. So that's Mandalorian is only shit 47 days away.
Nice.
The one thing that I'm also happy, there's a lot of things I'm happy about with this fucking show, um, is that Gina Carano was basically saying like, oh, or where the interview was like, oh, we've heard rumors of this character and this character and this character, and then she's like, some of them are true, some of them are not, and I'm like, which ones are fucking true? Because like all the rumors of Ahsoka or Rex or Boba Fett, and it's like, which rumor, like out of characters that are going to show up, would you want? Like,
I like those three, or I want Darth Maul. No, I'm kidding. Um, no, that I mean, out of those three, obviously, I really want Ahsoka, but I also love Rex. So, but I think they've already set up Boba Fett, so I think for me, I feel like for sure he's gonna be in there. But I would love to see Ahsoka, and they might. I feel like they'll have Rex for later because we have heard rumors about Tamara Morrison, like reprising that role. So
well, he's also rumored to be Boba Fett because it makes sense because he's an
yeah,
unaltered clone. So it's like, if he's rumored, he's either playing Rex or Boba. Or
I
what
mean,
might be cool is like if it's neither of those two and it's just like an old clone bounty hunter. Like if you want to introduce a new character, I'm cool with that too.
also, I mean, they're having this Bad Batch series, right? Maybe one of them. Who knows? Maybe all of them.
It would be interesting to see if there was a Bad Batch member,
Like still alive. Yeah.
especially if it was a Echo and it's like a cyborg clone dude that's a bounty hunter would be cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And
I mean,
there's a lot of things you could do, and obviously he would play all any of these characters because they're all
if,
him. Yeah. So yeah,
if you had to bet, what thing do you think he's playing if he is in The Mandalorian?
if he's in, I think most likely it would be Boba Fett. If that's like if they only do one,
Yeah.
it would be Boba Fett, and then probably Rex. But yeah, you never know because like he literally plays all of those characters, and obviously Disney with their budget and their technology, they can easily have him playing like 5 different characters in like one scene or something, you know. So who knows? But like I'd love to see Ahsoka, of course. So we'll see. I don't know what the progress is on like uh on Rosario Dawson's like legal trouble she was going through, or like the deal basically to be Ahsoka, but we'll see.
Because she's kind of let the cat out of the bag like early on, where she's like, I can't wait for the day that people find out or the announcement is made. So it's like she's playing her, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'm a little confused as to what exactly what's going on.
Well, the thing is, it's rumors that she's gonna be in the Mandalorian. We pretty much know that like Ahsoka will be in something or have her own show or whatever. But it's just rumors that she'll be like in the Mandalorian, and then we've kind of speculated that because Gideon has a dark saber, they're probably gonna need somebody with a lightsaber to help like fight him, and if he has force powers, definitely. So
Yeah, I have a feeling that that's because the other thing too that Giancarlo Esposito keeps saying repeatedly, because I think he just wants people to eat it up, is that he keeps saying Gideon's really good with that saber, and I'm like, Force you're good, or like Sabine Wren good, because two different things. Like
Vizsla
I
good
think you're a former Inquisitor or something.
as possible. Like, I mean, what's his name was pretty good. Leader of Death Watch, Vizsla. Like, he's pretty good. Obviously, he didn't stand a chance against Maul when they fought, but like he was pretty good though. So it's like, is he like Mandalorian good with a saber? Like, yeah, or Jedi?
I think he's gonna be a Force user, and I know a lot of people kind of want this show to like kind of stick away from, but it's like they're part of the galaxy. They're gonna show up, and to me, it's like it also reins people in because it would be interesting to see an Inquisitor for the first time in live action, and
Action,
it's a
yeah,
callback to Rebels. Like
yeah.
I think it makes sense because you have to think about it. It's like all the Inquisitors didn't just fucking go and die because the Empire was gone. I'm sure there was probably some on set and they're like, "Oh shit, the Empire's fallen. What the fuck do I do? I guess just grab this garrison and leave."
Yeah.
Like, I think that's him. He's one of the people that was just kind of like, "Oh shit, the Empire's fallen. The Emperor's gone. What do I do? I'll just keep trying to fight another day for the Empire because this is the only life I know."
Basically, just made himself a Moth.
Yeah, it's like I just upgraded myself to a Moth.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody to tell him they can't. So.
It's like, I wouldn't tell him he can't.
Exactly. Yeah, that. Yeah, there's so many possibilities that I feel like I get people who are like, oh, we kind of want the series to just be about like bounty hunters, Mandalorians. Like, we don't need to have Jedi. Like, I totally agree. You can if Ahsoka's in it, I think it'll probably just be kind of like a cameo. Maybe she's like Gideon or something to like help them out, and then they kind of just do that to segue to like her own show or something. But I think it's kind of unavoidable because obviously, I mean, Baby Yoda, the child, is a Force user. Like it's such a huge part of the Star Wars universe, the Force. So it's like you're not going to be able to avoid it. And now that they have a child who can use the Force, obviously you're going to have Force users after. And obviously he's pretty powerful because he's like basically a baby, but he's able to do some pretty like incredible things even as a baby. So yeah, and Yoda's race is obviously very very powerful with the Force in general. It seems so. Yeah.
I am curious because, like you said, it's kind of like it reminds me of the Avengers thing where Thor, I think, was telling all of them, like, it shows that you're capable of a higher form of warfare or something like that.
Mhm.
It's kind of like, so people are going to challenge you. It's kind of like, well, there's a little force user and people can probably pick up on its vibe. So you're probably going to have good allies and then enemies rushing to take advantage of the situation.
And there was the fact that we talked about before that they were obviously experimenting on this. They're trying to experiment on this kid. So is it possible that he is a clone or something, maybe of Yoda?
I wouldn't be surprised. The Emperor was all into that shit and it's
Mm.
documented. And what better person to clone than the most powerful force user, or arguably the most powerful force user, Yoda?
Yeah. So it's like uh, even more so. There's going to be people after that, and they're going to send the most powerful possible people they can to go after that, like Gideon here with the dark saber, possibly with force powers. Who knows? But it's gonna be like more and more powerful people like trying to get this kid, trying to get this child.
My question to you about Gideon, do you think he's working for someone even higher, or do you think it's just him at this point?
I mean, he's in Star Wars. There's always a hierarchy, especially when we start off, you know, at the beginning of something. So like this is season one. Like he's introduced as the big bad for this. There's always somebody higher a lot of times that we don't know about. In the original trilogy, obviously we knew about Darth Vader and in A New Hope, and they talked about like the Emperor or whatever, but we didn't like see him until like the next movie, you know. So it's like, and we still barely saw him in the next movie, but there's always like just somebody higher. Phantom Menace is like, oh, Darth Maul is the one coming after you, but then Palpatine is the actual threat. I feel like there's always somebody behind who we think is the main bad guy at first. I don't know who it would be. Oh, you know what? You know what? Thrawn. I'm trying to think of people who would have enough like power and influence. And then he went to that whole thing with Ezra, and they're talking about doing this whole thing with Rebels where they're older now, so it would tie in. So I don't know if they went to like some sort of weird like different dimension or like this world between worlds or something. It's possible. So then Thrawn would still be possibly still younger, still well not younger, he's old, but like I don't know. I feel like that's the only person I can think of who's in it right now, unless they make a completely new character. The only person I can think of who would be like who would have enough power and like influence to be like over somebody like Gideon.
I think one potential possibility, but I don't know if they're going to want to do it, could be the Emperor himself. There's not a lot of people that know about it, or maybe somehow it indirectly ties the
Well,
Emperor, a follower of him that's helping, and the Emperor communicates to this follower to go to Moff Gideon. Because it makes me wonder who knows that the Emperor has survived, because when he died on the Death Star, from what the canon has established, he immediately transferred his Force essence elsewhere.
mhm.
So he was already kind of just looming in the shadows. So if he's been working on all this shit this whole time, I wouldn't be surprised if it's connected directly to him. And then hopefully Ian McDiarmid has a little bit of redemption and gets a good story to work with. I do like the idea that you mentioned with Thrawn. I wasn't rolling my eyes, just looking up to the light. But Thrawn, I could see the only issue with Thrawn is I forget Mandalorian. I think takes place 5 or 8 years after Return of the Jedi, and at the end of Rebels is kind of Return of the Jedi, but Thrawn and Ezra are elsewhere, so it can work. And I've heard the rumor. It's been a reported rumor by a pretty decent source that is broken Star Wars stuff, like they talked about the Bad Batch and stuff before it came out. They reported that a Rebels continuation is in the works and would have been announced at Celebration, potentially. And it is the continuation of that story with Ahsoka and Sabine looking for Ezra. So, do we see any Rebels characters in Mandalorian? Do you think?
I mean, in a
Besides
way, I
Amazing.
guess Ahsoka kind of is, or like Rex kind of is, because if they have Rex in this, he's gonna be like the bald headed, like you
Old
know,
man self.
the old man self. So they have like those. They technically be, I guess, Rebels characters, but I think we could definitely see some. They want to introduce. I'm pretty sure, and Dave Filoni's on it, so I think they want to introduce some of these Rebels characters to the mainstream audience who aren't going to watch the animated stuff. So I could see it. But now you actually brought up a good point with Palpatine, because yeah, with this whole sequel trilogy thing, they want to try and tie things together. I'm sure, so that I could see it being that, but they might not reveal that until like season 3 or season 4 or something. That Palpatine's still pulling the strings. I do feel like somebody like Gideon doesn't know if it is Palpatine. I think they're probably going to show us eventually throughout this how the First Order started, because obviously right now the Empire is still around, but they're like really scattered all over the place with these different little segmented like forces. So I think somebody like Palpatine or Snoke or whatever is kind of going to come in and pull these people together and be like, we're going to create something new or whatever. But yeah, I don't think anybody besides Palpatine's little stadium full of random Sith ghosts know that he's alive. Yeah.
The one person I would be curious to see if they ever utilize live action, because she would be a cool character, is Admiral Ray Sloan, or I think she's Grand Admiral Ray Sloan now, but she a woman of color. I think she's also LGBTQ. I might be wrong, but I can't remember. But everything that I've read about her and have read with her in it, she's a pretty badass character that did survive. I don't think they ever really talked about what, and she's gonna be in Star Wars Squadron, so I don't know if they're gonna end up capturing her in the game or whatever. But it would be interesting if she's pulling the strings, because she would. Because I don't know if Inquisitors technically outrank Imperial leadership, since they're kind of Emperor and Vader's personal little
I don't think so,
thing.
because Vader didn't seem to outrank Tarkin or anything. And obviously, well, I mean, it depends on who gave Gideon his title of Moff. But I mean, he has a dark saber, and he seems like he's going to be a very pretty decent threat. So I feel like he's pretty high ranking to whoever the hierarchy is right now. I don't think Inquisitors do. I've never. I'm trying to think of like throughout Fallen Order or Rebels, if they ever showed anything where Inquisitors were kind of like leading things stuff like an admiral or a moff or whatever. And I don't think
No, they've always just
so.
kind of worked on their own, like kind of, I guess, somewhat independently. Like
Yeah,
they're almost like a contract killer working alongside
yeah. Like even the first Inquisitor in the first season of Rebels, because he was like, what was he, the
the Grand
Grand
Inquisitor.
Inquisitor? Even he didn't. I mean, I think he had like some small forces with him, but I never saw him like that I can remember. He had like controlling like a full regimen, like giving orders to like all of these generals and admirals and stuff. I don't remember seeing that.
Which is why I'm curious if Moff Gideon was like, in order to survive, I need my own personal task, so therefore I am Moff.
Mm-hmm. I don't
I
know.
really love his TIE fighter design.
There's so many possibilities. I'd love to see Thrawn in live action though. That would be really cool.
I feel like at some point we will get him. I hope in a series because he is a very just interesting and intricate character that
Mm-hmm.
if you just kind of dug into his mindset, because while reading the Thrawn he is loyal to the ultimate plan of helping his own people.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think in any way, shape, or form he is truly evil.
Yeah, then that's the thing about his character is like he's just like he's high ranking and he's really smart and he's doing his job. And he's almost like how we talked about Dooku, where he almost has a respect for the people that he's like hunting, that he's hunting down, that he's trying to find and like, you know, take to what he believes I'm pretty sure is justice. He's like, oh, you have to take these, rebel terrorists or whatever, and he reminds me of like somebody like Dooku, where like, yes, he's a Sith, he's evil, he works at Palpatine, but he almost has this like certain kind of honor, basically, that he goes by, and that's what
Yeah,
Thrawn reminds me of.
I agree because he doesn't seem like a shady character. He
Mm-hmm.
doesn't. He's definitely not like if you read the books, he's not one for playing politics and bullshit. He's very upfront and just wants to get shit done. He's
Yeah,
not.
like he even gives respect to like Ezra. Like you see like a lot of these other bad guys throughout Rebels, and they like would disrespect Ezra all the time. But he even gave respect to him and like pretty much all of them, because he's like he has this thing where I think he kind of like wants he needs to get into the head of who he's going against. So he kind of like tries to understand them and everything. Like, okay, this is probably what they're going to do. And like obviously right up there until the end of Rebels, like he was right there, like right along with where they were going. Like he just knew these things because he's just that smart. I do hope that if they do live action Thrawn, that they give us like full red eyes, because I know that they did that for Rebels because they wanted them to look more like friendly for kids or something. But yeah, I hope they give us the full like red eyes in live action. But we'll see.
What do you mean full red eyes?
Because in the original like books that Thrawn was in, he didn't have pupils or like what is it, like the corneas or whatever. Like he didn't have those. His eyes were just pure red.
I think that's also more concept art and just kind of guessing of what he is.
Mhm.
Like I feel like to me it would just look kind of weird, and I think his character does. Because I think on the book covers they made him have pupils. Let me see
Well,
real quick.
that race, like that race, if you've ever played the Old Republic and stuff, they have that race in there, and then that's how they are. They have like these just pure red eyes, and it makes them look evil, but they're not necessarily evil. So I think that that's an interesting thing, especially when you talk about how he's not actually like yeah, he's on the bad side, but he's not necessarily like an evil, conniving person. And I always thought it was interesting about that race is that they have eyes like that, but then they don't necessarily have to be look like it, just like the Dathomirians.
Because even for the books they have pupils and stuff.
Oh, did they? I don't know. I was just going out the ones in the game, and then that original like Thrawn cover where. But in those books, yeah, you're right. I think they were more like concept art or something.
Yeah, but I mean, I like the newer design of him for sure. And then the other thing too with Rebels is since it's very based on Ralph McQuarrie art, it's a little difficult to feel or understand what these characters would look like in live action, which is why I'm a little worried about what Ahsoka would look like.
Hmm.
It's bad enough when you have human characters and what they would translate to. What's even worse is like, okay, you have something that really doesn't exist or anything close to it in our world, and then you're going to try and bring it in live action. There are really good cosplays, but I would never want to see a cosplay as the live action version. I don't think I've ever seen one definitively that looks,
Like Ahsoka, straight up like Ahsoka. Yeah,
well, not just that, but like you can definitely tell that it's not, and it's not
that it's a
the,
person.
yeah, and it's not any disrespect to anyone that cosplays Ahsoka or Hera or anyone like that. It's just I think to have a really good one, you would kind of almost need to have a bit of CGI work
Hmm.
and for it to look weird saying it, but natural, like it belongs or she
Yeah,
belongs. And it would, I don't know how Thrawn would go because it's like, I've seen really good Thrawn cosplays, but I don't know if I would want to see a full on.
but
Unless you did some prosthetic work, like really good prosthetic work, and
no, that I agree. Like the whole time we've been talking about this, all these rumors and stuff over like this podcast, whatever. That's always my worry. Especially when you talk about TV shows. If it's a movie, I feel like I'm less worried. But obviously they got a bigger budget, so that makes me, like I said, a little less worried. But TV shows, for the most part, have always been kind of like looked almost lower budget than like movies. Like you look at these like DC superhero shows, and sometimes they're fine, but then yeah, sometimes like the powers or the suits or whatever, they look a little,
janky.
yeah,
Yeah.
they look like somebody in a cosplay almost. And it's like I said, like you said, cosplays can be good, but yeah, when you can tell like that this isn't really like a superhero, this is somebody in a costume acting like a superhero. So yeah, that'd be my one worry. I think that obviously Disney, they have really good visual effects and like CGI and everything, so I think that they could pull it off. Obviously, if they did Thrawn, they would probably just have somebody in like these prosthetics and like all this like makeup, and then do like stuff like his eyes with CG. But like, damn, I'm at depending on like how much he does, like that's. I mean, how much of Thrawn would you really need to do CG on? Because I feel like you could do quite a bit practical. But yeah, definitely the
Yeah.
eyes. Definitely the eyes. I'd have to do CG.
Yeah, if you wanted a little bit of a glow effect, I feel like you would need to. I'm just
Hmm.
looking at right now the actor that plays Lars or Thrawn, Lars Mikkelsen, and I'm kind of curious if they would use him because I love his Thrawn voice so much,
Wait,
or if they would
Lars
hire someone else to do it. Because I mean, he looks.
Lars Mikkelsen?
Yeah, that's the
Is he
voice.
related to?
Matt is brothers,
Ah,
so
nice,
they're both in the Star Wars universe.
cool.
But yeah, like there is mock-ups of him in blue face paint, but I don't know
Yeah, you know what?
if.
Yeah, I think he would fit, man.
Now, some people say Michael Fassbender would be really good.
Yeah, I like Michael Fassbender too. Yeah, dude's tall as shit too.
So it's like that's the other thing is like I'm so used to Thrawn being animated. It's like, but then when someone else plays him that isn't the same voice, it gets a little weird. I think that's the issue with bringing those characters into the fold because it's like when you've seen a lot of them, it's one thing, or it's completely different than say like Saw Gerrera, where he was in a pretty good Clone Wars arc, but
Hmm.
he it's Clone Wars, it's animated, and it can really be translated. So Forrest Whitaker was all right.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about that though. Even that kind of threw me off because honestly, I watched Clone Wars and I watched that, and just Forrest Whitaker as him doesn't really look like the one from Clone Wars to me. But like you said, it wasn't that important of a character, so I wasn't really concerned. I'm like, we can Like they put him in Jedi Fallen Order as like a slightly younger like Forrest Whitaker Saw Gerrera, and I'm like, I'm fine with that because his character in Clone Wars was like it was like minuscule at best. Like it was a good arc, like you said, but yeah, I feel you. That's my other worry with Ahsoka is I'm just worried that we get to that point and I see more Rosario Dawson than I do Ahsoka, and I love Rosario Dawson, but yeah, that'd be my only worry is that I see and I hear more Rosario Dawson than Ahsoka. Obviously, she's like a grown woman now, but yeah, it's been Ashley Eckstein for so long, and then we've only seen her animated. Yeah, that'd be my only concern.
Yeah, and I feel like Dave Filoni, if he doesn't like it, it's not gonna happen. So I trust with him being on board that
Hmm.
it it'll be all right. I have a lot of worries about it, and I'm sure he does too, and everyone working on it. If she is in it, and even if she ends up not being that great, I'm not gonna fault them because I can see how fucking difficult it is to bring that character to life and translate them for another. That's the other thing you have to think about too is like for a lot of people, this will be like their first time ever hearing about the character. So I would understand if they try to go a little bit different of a route with her. And as long as it seems clean and solid, I think I'll be okay. But I'll probably always love Ashley Eckstein's Ahsoka way more.
Hmm. Yeah, like I'm not worried that Rosario's also gonna be bad because she's like a really good actress. Like I said, the only thing I'm worried about is whether or not I'll feel like it's
Ahsoka.
Ahsoka. Yeah, like she'll be good. She's always good, but like I don't know. I'm trying to think of an example of like people who were good, but then they uh, Solo. Let's say Solo. They were good, but they didn't feel like Han Solo and I think Donald Glover did a little bit better of a job, but still, to me, I wasn't like, yes, that's Billy D. Williams playing him like younger. You know what I mean? Like that that'd be my only concern, but we'll see.
I agree with you on that one for sure. I mean, Alden Ehrenreich, I thought he did as good of a job as he could.
Hmm.
I would still like to see more of a solo series because I want some loose ends to be wrapped up because I think that's something that's cool.
Speaking of, have you ever looked up these like deep fakes? Have you ever seen those?
No. Well, I mean, some, but of what exactly?
There's like I forgot what channel it was, but he's been doing a bunch. Like he's done Matrix and stuff, but he's been doing a bunch of like Star Wars ones in these last like 5 6 months or so. And
Yeah.
he did ones where he put um, Harrison Ford's face on in like the solo scenes. And he even had
Yeah.
a scene where he put Billy D. Williams and Hun and Harrison Ford like on their faces when they're standing next to each other.
Mhm.
They're done pretty well. And I forgot who else he did. He did like he did Sebastian Stan on Luke's face. They're actually kind of interesting to see. It's actually a little scary that that technology exists, but yeah.
No, some of that deep fake stuff is just getting better and better. Like I know there's a big issue with it in like adult films. I'm
Oh
extremely
yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
But like transposing like an actress's or actor's face on like a body and like having the mouth movement like talking like them, and it's like
Hmm.
it's so fucking creepy because it's like excuse me. Sorry, people. It's been a really fucking long week moving into a new apartment in LA and exhausted. Um, but it's like, yeah, it's so fucking weird.
Yeah.
And it's only going to get better, which makes it worse. So it's like,
Yeah, and then people can do this at home, which is the scary thing. So yeah, with like a laptop, they can do that shit.
Like, I'm gonna make a porno with uh, George Lucas and a squirrel monkey.
Seriously, like,
More.
I think people have already tried to do like, especially with like politics and shit. People are gonna try and do so much with that, but we'll see.
I'm curious of what you think about this. So, do you think, or before I ask this, John Favreau also mentioned that there's going to be different time lengths with the episodes.
Mhm.
So, what are your thoughts? Like, do you think the average episode will be closer to an hour or at least 45 minutes? Or do you think we're going to have like a 30-minute episode and there's like an hour episode? Like, what do you think they're going to do?
I think they'll go the. I think they'll go a little bit longer. I would say. I think he's setting it up to like, oh, they're gonna be different lengths. As like, they'll probably be like, like in Clone Wars, we get like a more special episode. It's gonna be a little bit longer or something. And I think they're gonna kind of have that. I mean, obviously they're a little bit longer than Clone Wars already, but I think they'll have more than that. Where it's like, oh, this one's gonna be like close to 40 minutes. I'm not sure if we'll get to an hour because I'm not sure if they would extend it that much, from the first season. But I think close to 40 minutes could be expected because like
I mean,
40 minutes or so with like commercials is about an hour. Like if you were watching it on actual TV, so I can see close to that. I don't know if they'll extend to like an hour though.
I
But
hope they
see.
do 5 at the bare minimum
Mhm. We'll
because
see.
that's the big issue with Disney Plus content is that it's so fucking short.
You know what else Disney Plus started, and I'm kind of fine with it, but I also kind of hate it is that the releasing weekly thing, which is it's obviously how shows used to be, but Amazon's doing it now with the boys, where they basically released like 3 episodes, and now they release one on this Friday, like episode 4. They're releasing like every Friday, and they obviously are doing this so people won't, binge watch the whole season and then cancel their, Prime or whatever, or the Disney Plus. But that's literally all that I have Prime for right now. Honestly, it's just to watch The Boys because it's a really good show.
I gotta check it out. People keep telling me to watch it.
Yeah, I'm like, but I'll say Disney Plus at least has more. But yeah, like
In terms of original content,
it's like there was a reason though back in the day why every episode had to be released like every week because they were like producing them, but they already have all these produced. So it's kind of like it's a little weird when they're already produced. Like I don't know.
and they're just sitting out. It's like to me, the thing that you should do is like just drop all. I get it and I don't because
From a business standpoint, I get it. Like because you don't want people to just get your service for like a free trial or whatever, and then watch them all in one night and then get rid of it. But
well, because I think at first Disney Plus had a thing where if you signed up, you had to sign up. Like you couldn't cancel your service. Like I think you had to be at least on it for 3 months. You had to pay for at least 3 months.
hmm,
I don't know if they gotten rid of that. Like to me, that's what you should just do. Like who gives a shit? Like if you have a mandatory time where you're charged, that's fine with me.
yeah,
And the other thing too is like I get doing it week to week because it builds up hype. But the other
hmm,
thing too is like building up that hype can lead to disappointment. Because I remember watching The Mandalorian, some of the episodes, and because of that hype, I was disappointed. Like episode 4, I really did not care for because I was like, can we get only this? Like it really just got under my skin. And then like the first episode was kind of cool, but it's like it's so. The ending was like the only good thing about it to me.
Yeah, to be honest, after the first episode, I was like, this is decent, but I'm not sure how much I'll get into this show. Like that, after the first few, honestly, I was like that. I mean, they introduced the, well, Baby Yoda, so I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. So I'll definitely, I mean, I'm gonna keep watching either way because it's Star Wars. But like, yeah, it didn't really catch me until like maybe in the middle of that season. I want to say, like, it didn't really like hook me. And then finally, like near the end, I was like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I'm trying to think. Do you, the question that I had earlier, do you think Mando will end up naming the child? Because calling him just the child seems a little weird to keep doing that over and over again. It'll eventually get annoying. And then the follow up question is when they say you have to return him to his people, do you think his people are either A, the Jedi, so with Luke Skywalker and his school of Jedi, B, with the species, or C, maybe it's just the man Mando adopts the kid? And then the last question, how would you want the series to end?
Okay, so starting with the first question, that was, uh, can you give me that again? First question.
Do you think Mando will name the child?
Um, the only way that I see the Mando like naming the child is maybe he has like a kind of sentimental moment. He talks about maybe like the Mandalorians that saved him. Maybe he names it after somebody like that. You know, that's the only way I can see that. But I feel like somebody else might, like Cara Dune, or maybe it goes back to the planet where there's that woman, um, who they kind of had like a thing or something. Maybe like she will. Who knows? That's what I feel like will happen is somebody else will name a child and he'll just kind of go along with it. Like, all right, I guess that's better than saying the child all the time. Like some little joke or something. And then second question, give me that again.
Second question. Oh, do you think when they say, "Oh, you'll be with him until you return him to his people," do you think the people that Mandel will return him to is the Jedi, so like Luke Skywalker in the training academy, because the armor was told about like his force powers or whatever, or do you think it's just with the species on their home planet, or do you think Mando just ends up adopting him?
Well, I feel like the most likely thing right now would be that he like adopts it, basically, because I don't think they would have Luke's academy in this, because that means they'd have to get somebody to play Luke, and unless they completely surprise us, which is possible, you never know. There hasn't been anything about them like casting anybody for Luke or anything like that, so I don't know. Unless they completely surprise us, I don't see that happening. And then I don't know, where do you even find Yoda's people? Like, does anybody even know that? I feel like he wouldn't know that. So I don't know if that would happen either. Because finding Yoda's people doesn't seem like an easy task at all.
Well, they could run into someone that knows a lot about certain things, like a Maz Kanata.
Yeah, I mean, they could totally bring Lupita Nyong'o in. Yeah.
Because I
Uh,
think it's really cool to have them go to Maz's castle. Because, like they said, she's been around for over 1,000 years, and it's a smuggler's and kind of bounty
and
hunters.
that was one of the better locations in Force Awakens for sure. Like that was a really cool place. Um, yeah, I think it's possible that Mascanata could be in it, and she would know that. So that's a possibility. But I think that he might, like I think we talked about this before. I think this season might be about them bonding, and then maybe he adopts them, and he's like, you know what, I think I'll raise you or whatever, instead of trying to like give them to somebody else. And then right as soon as he does that, Gideon like attacks him and takes the child or something. I can see that happening, like the kind of the middle of the season kind of like climax thing, where he's like, oh, I've accepted that me and this child are very close now, and I'm going to take care of it. And then right as soon as he does that, like loses him. So I could see that possibly happening. And then third question.
How do you think the series will end, or how do you want it to end? Because they already are slated to do a season 3.
Hmm. I
So
do feel like it'll probably end up going to like at least a season 4, just because I feel like they want to introduce other, big bads possibly, which I think will take more than one other season. I mean, it depends on what they do this season, I guess, but um, I think it could end what we were talking about, where um, Palpatine's probably the one pulling these strings behind the scenes, and then it kind of ends with like the the what's it called, the First Order being put together, and then see, my only thing that I'm thinking about is what's going to happen with the child. That's the only thing that I'm not really sure, because we obviously don't see him in the sequel trilogy at all, and he's definitely going to still be alive if he's part of Yoda's race. He's going to be like a teenager then at that point, like what? Not even like a preteen. He's going to be still pretty young. So it's like, where is he at? What is he doing? Who is he with? So maybe I don't know. I don't know, man. That's it's a hard question. What do you think? Because I'm not really sure. The only thing I can think of is maybe seeing the First Order being formed.
yeah, Favreau and Filoni kind of talked about it in the interview. Like it's a big risk to make a small version of that race, and how does it fit into the story, and especially when it is an infant and can only do so much to an extent. And we don't know how Yoda's race ages, because I know that there's going to probably be some retconning, because and I was watching this in Return of the Jedi, where he was like, for over 900 or for over 800 years trained Jedi have I. The child is 50. I don't know when the fuck that age jump really happens and he matures to where he can be a Jedi master or a teacher. So it's kind of one of those weird things that needs to be explained. And I get not everything, and there's a good thing about mysticism to Star Wars, but I think they would have been better off not giving it an age, or at least because it seems
Yeah, that definitely makes us has had to speculate way too much. Like, oh my god, so he's 50 and he's like a fucking toddler. So like, what the fuck is gonna happen in like 20 years and 30 years and like 50 years? Like, because what was Yoda was close to 900, right?
yeah, because he jokes and he's like, when 900 years old you are, look as good you will not. So
Yeah.
he's high 800s or maybe.
So he had to be at least 100, I guess, when he started to train Jedi. So I don't know. I guess between that 50 years of being 50 and 100, they just
Age.
are, yeah, they're just older, and then they just keep being older. I don't know. It could maybe be like the clones, maybe they have like, not, I wouldn't say accelerated, because obviously that he's 50 and he's still a toddler, but maybe it's like they grow up fast in their years. They grow up fast, and then they kind of like stay, like the first 100 years is like they go from baby to adult, and then they just kind of stay an adult for like the next 800, 900 years. I guess maybe it's possible.
It's funny, I didn't think about it when you said growth acceleration. Maybe when it's scanned, it says that it's 50, but it's not physically. I don't know. It's weird.
And and if it's a clone, that also brings in the fact of will it age the way that Yoda would if it's a clone? Because obviously the clones didn't age the same. So
Yeah, because they lived double the life in the short amount of time. Because when they were like 10 years old, they were already 20, ready to fight.
yep. So it's like, yeah, how How will it age? There's like so many factors to put into it. It's like, yeah, it's definitely confusing. So man, maybe they put the 50 in there. It's possible they put the 50 in there to throw us off, so that we would sit here and speculate about like, oh yeah, well he's 50, and then Yoda was this old, and they know that because I mean, like I said, Dave Filoni's a fucking encyclopedia. He knows how we fucking think. So he might have been like, okay, if we throw this age out here, but he ends up being a clone and it doesn't work the same, he knows that we're all going to be sitting here speculating about. Dude, I feel like I'm going crazy right now. By the way, have you ever seen that meme of the fucking dude from Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Charlie, and he has like the little board with all the little strings on it. And he's
Yeah.
like, that's what I feel like right now. I'm just like,
Yeah.
all these fucking like conspiracies. I'm like, you know what? Dave Filoni's trying to fucking throw us off, but it's not gonna work, motherfucker. Like,
I've seen Star Wars like this is Star Wars canon.
yeah. And I get so many fucking videos that pop up on my thing like, this is the story of how Jar Jar and Darth Vader actually had dinner together. Canon. I'm just like, I'm not gonna click on that. I just know it's gonna be some bullshit. Like,
It's like, but it's true. Look at this comic. I was like,
no, they
oh,
always take the most minuscule details. Like, oh yeah, Jar Jar was having dinner, and then he had a,
maybe
and then his head of Vader, and I was like, oh, okay.
Miss Lava Ali.
Yeah, yeah. I
I
just
just
feel like I was going like 8 miles an hour, like 20,000 miles an hour right there. Shit.
the one thing that I'm a little worried about is that it's 8 episodes, and they said they're gonna dive into different characters. To me, it could be cool, but if you only have episodes, that was my thing about the last season. And I know Dave Filoni usually starts kind of, embedding little things to pay off later. Like I have a feeling the end of the series is going to be Mando retiring with the child to go like hook up with that lady and start a family and just have an easy life. Like I feel like that's the reason they went to that fucking village. Like that's going to be the ending. Or maybe they can completely surprise us. I don't know. But some of those episodes they did feel a little fillery, and it's like you have 8 episodes and they're really fucking short.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you need to make each one count, which is why I really was disappointed with Clone Wars, because it's like you have 12 episodes, and normally Clone Wars more. And those Martez sister episodes was just like, this is a fucking waste of my time. Like I didn't need this for 4 episodes.
They really only served to kind of lead Ahsoka to the Mandalorians. That's was basically the point of them. So it's like, did we need those? Yeah, like they could have just honestly just found her somewhere and been like, Ahsoka, we need your help or something. But yeah,
Yeah, it's a fucking waste.
yeah, no, I totally agree with that sentiment. Uh, like you said, Dave Filoni will do things to set things up, but he's not. He's obviously not perfect. I think that as storytellers, we can kind of relate that sometimes we'll be writing some shit, and it's like we just throw some stuff in there, and we're like, you kind of need somebody to look at it and be like, hey, do you really need this? You know? So yeah, like I I get it. Sometimes you just throw something in there, you're like, oh, that's gonna be so cool, and then you think about it more, and you're like, does that make any fucking sense? Mm. And that's what the sequel trilogy needed. But anyway, uh, nah,
Yeah, I think Favreau and Filoni are just the fucking future of this franchise. Like, and to an extent, Deborah Chow, because I loved her Mandalorian
mhm.
episode, but I think she'll kill it.
Yeah, I hope that when whatever movies they decide to do next, those are definitely some of the people that they consider. Even like, I mean, we talked about though Taika Waititi. He probably do more of an intimate story, but he did do a really good job on Thor, uh, on the last Thor. So I don't know. I think he could do something with the movie or two. So yeah, we'll
I,
see.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious, like you were saying, because he tends to do more intimate movies. So I'm kind of curious as to whether or not um, he's gonna be like big film like Thor was, because he's also doing the fourth Thor, right? Thunder and Love.
Yeah, Love and Thunder.
If he's gonna do a big like blockbustery feel, or if he's gonna do something smaller and intimate, I think both could work. But I'm very curious of what the smaller and intimate story would be about. Like I can see a lot happening with the big blockbuster thing, and there's things you could easily guess. But a smaller, intimate film, it's like, well, whose perspective are we going to see? Because we haven't really had anything like that.
Well, it seems like they're bringing back Natalie Portman to be, Jane again, and I think she's gonna be like the female Thor and everything, basically. So that thing is definitely gonna be some good development between those two characters. 'Cause I thought it was just really fucking weird between Thor: The Dark World and then Ragnarok, just like how she kind of just disappeared.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like they talked about her and like thinking the Avengers too, and it's kind of awkward. But yeah, we'll see. I trust him to do like always a good, always a really good humor, really good fucking character development and shit. So yeah, that I'm excited to see that. And if he did do a story in Star Wars, like I don't think he would do anything like Knights of the Old Republic or anything. I don't think he'd do anything like that. But
It, because they were setting up to do something like that, so I wouldn't be surprised if he's the one that took over that project.
I mean, it'll certainly be interesting. I'll say that. I just like Knights of the Old Republic as a property is just so. I feel like it's so the reverse of like things that he does. But I mean, he could he could make it like different. I think in a good way. So I wouldn't be mad about it. It's just like KOTOR is just so what's the word? It's so somber and kind of like serious and very like it's about like kind of war and like basically the Republic like losing, like a lot of it's about that, like kind of losing to the Sith and everything. So I don't know, but I mean, see, I'm very because in Ragnarok it was kind of like that, right? At the end, like they lost, like they literally lost their whole home world. So I mean, we'll see, we'll see.
Yeah. I think that'll do it for us today at Jabbering Jawas. Thank you all for listening as always, and um, hope everyone's doing out there or doing well out there with everything going on. Do apologize for me yawning a few times. Just like I said, it's been a very tiring, exhausting week, both mentally and physically. So hopefully, be more powered up for next week, where we will probably continue with The Force Awakens and reviewing and discussing what went wrong and maybe something right. Well, Force Awakens good. The other two are gonna be hard to find something right. We'll do.
Those are gonna be fun. It'll be fun discussions.
Yeah, it was terrible. They sound like a broken record. Broken record. This is a shit pile. Thank you.
Call George to be on the podcast with us. So, what do you think, George?
um, no comment.
I mean, basically, I don't think he wants to say anything too bad, but yeah.
Like Mandalorian was good. Dave Filoni, great head on his shoulders. Always listen. Uh, Kennedy, all them, not so much.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, that'll be a fun discussion. Thank you all for tuning in. I'll put all social and everything, all socials and shit down there somewhere. And I mean, if you're listening to this on the podcast, you're not gonna see my hands, but down below somewhere. But yeah, you'll have a good one.
Area. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, they're all gonna be down there. No. Yeah, y'all have a good one. And may the force be with you.
Always.